We'd like to welcome you this morning to 33 Days to Eucharistic Glory. And this week we'll be featuring some of our parish life events. Today we're focused on OCIA. So these are some of the folks in OCIA currently or their sponsors. So if everyone wants to wave and say hello. Hello! And we'll get started with you this morning on page 38. So Ben, maybe if you come on up closer now.
There are other people in the room, but they're too shy.
So OCIA, the Order of Christian Initiation for Adults. So Todd and Angel teach this class on Sunday mornings at 8:30 and Wednesday evenings at 6:30. And do you still start with the potluck at 6?
We do.
Yeah, so anybody's welcome to come and learn about the Catholic faith and or refresh. We have a lot of parishioners just coming in and realizing, hey, I never knew that, and I wanted to learn more. So you're very welcome to attend. Just contact Todd or Angel to find out more. Sunday mornings or Wednesday evenings here at St. John. So today, day 6, is 6 defining spiritual moments. The spiritual life is chief among serious endeavors. Something that is serious is demanding and requires careful consideration and earnest application. Our need for depth and seriousness is best met with a rich inner life. The spiritual life is made up of seasons, and even in the darkest moments, it is important to remind ourselves that spring will come again. What is unchanging allows us to sense the sense of change. The 6 lessons I am about to share with you have served me well in every season. Over the past 35 years, I have experienced many seasons in my spiritual life. Long stretches of great spiritual consistency, other stretches when I have been inconsistent in my prayer, times of resistance and times of surrender, seasons of great patience and seasons of selfish impatience. Periods when I couldn't wait to get prayer, and periods when I had to force myself to keep showing up. Days when I felt the warmth of God's love fill my whole being, and days when I felt so cold, it seemed He could not be further away from me. Weeks when I felt I was in the thickest fog, and months when I saw things with great clarity. Seasons of trial when nothing seemed to go right, and seasons of triumph when it seemed nothing could go wrong. The 6 lessons we're about to describe to you have a seismic impact on our inner lives and outer lives. And I am confident they will also have a great impact on your life. The definition of seismic is of enormous proportion or effect. I use that word very deliberately here. And Angel will take it for the first shift.
The first shift. Just begin the conversation. This is the first seismic shift in the spiritual life. Prayer is a conversation. Once that conversation has begun, it can lead anywhere. Most important, it will lead to the places it needs to lead to. Never underestimate how important it is to just begin the conversation. This is true with your friends and colleagues, your brothers and sisters, your spouse, your children, and of course with God. This first shift requires us to make the journey from the head to the heart, to turn from a thinking type of prayer to a relational style of prayer. It is about learning to pray from your heart.
And John Dulock is our pastoral council president, and he takes the next step.
The second shift, ask God what He wants. The second of these seismic shifts occurs within the conversation when we stop asking God for what we want and start asking for what He wants. The majority of prayers mumbled and muttered, whispered and screamed on the planet today will be asking God for something. The second shift is seismic because it is when we begin to ask the big question, God, what do you think I should do? When we start asking God for advice, direction, inspiration, and guidance, this is a significant moment When we stop asking Him for things, for favors, for our will to be done, we begin to open ourselves to much more than His will. We begin to open ourselves to His wisdom. As we mature spiritually, we realize that to want anything other than the will of God is foolish and futile. But in the early stages of our spiritual development, the will of God can seem heavy, restrictive, and burdensome, even though the opposite is true. The other thing that happens when we ask God about His ways and plans is that we begin to adopt a spiritual curiosity. This curiosity about God and His dreams for us and the world can be incredibly invigorating. It transforms the way we see ourselves, other people, creation, society, and indeed God Himself. Getting what we want doesn't make us happy. We know that from experience. The wise seek the will of God in all things.
Good job, Mr. President.
All right, and then we continue with Tim.
The third shift, give yourself to prayer. The third seismic shift that occurs in the inner life is when we stop doing our prayer and start giving ourselves to prayer. Giving yourself to prayer means showing up and letting God do what He wants to do with you during that time of prayer. It means letting go of expectations and agendas for our time with God. It means detachment from the feelings that prayer provokes within us. In the 7 levels of intimacy, the author, introduced the concept of carefree timelessness. Carefree timelessness is the reason young people fall in love so easily, and the lack of carefree timelessness is the reason so many couples fall out of love. What is carefree timelessness? Time together without an agenda. Excuse me. The third seismic shift of the spiritual life requires us to surrender to the experience and to believe that God is working in us, even when it feels like we are not accomplishing anything. It is about enjoying some carefree timelessness with God. What makes it difficult is that so much of our lives are focused on doing and accomplishing. This shift requires us to let go and focus on being. The shift from doing prayer and the shift from doing prayer to giving ourselves to prayer may seem subtle, but the reality is it is one of the most significant interchanges that can take place in our souls.
And yeah, thank you, Dick.
The fourth shift transforms everything into prayer. Prayer is not an activity that encompasses a small portion of our day. It is a way of life. Prayer awakens our spiritual senses and we become aware of God at our side throughout the day. Not that He is in our presence, but that we are continually in His presence. The fourth seismic shift occurs when we discover that every activity can be transformed into a prayer by offering it to God. Pray constantly was St. Paul's invitation, and it is a beautiful spiritual principle. Learning to transform daily activity into prayer was one of the greatest spiritual lessons of my life. Offer the next hour of your work for a friend who is sick. Offer the task you are at least looking forward to today to God as a prayer for the person you know who is suffering most today. And do that task with great love. Better that you have ever done it. Offer each task one at a time to God as a prayer for a specific intention, and do so with love.
Thanks, Dick. And Jason?
The fifth shift, make yourself available. Do you wish to know the secret to supreme happiness? Strip away everything in your heart that makes you less available to God. The joy we experience is proportional to how available we make ourselves to God. The fifth shift is about making ourselves 100% available to God. Consecration is ultimately about making ourselves available to God. Prayer is about making ourselves available to God. Through prayer, our spiritual awareness is constantly fine-tuned, and the more fine-tuned it becomes, the more we come to see that so few things really matter. The challenge, then, is to focus on the things that really matter. Is your life focused on the things that matter most? The fifth seismic shift in the spiritual life is availability. It is about surrendering ourselves, our plan, and our lives to God. It is through this surrender that our ultimate transformation takes place. It is through this surrender that we make ourselves 100% available to God, allowing Him to transform us and our lives. How available are you to God? Are you ready to surrender and make yourself completely available to Him?
Hello. Okay. I thought I was going to be introduced.
This is Todd, our spiritual director and coordinator of discipleship.
Hello. The sixth shift. Just keep showing up. No matter what, just keep showing up to prayer. Keep showing up to Mass. Keep showing up for your spiritual routine and rituals. We will explore this sixth shift in more detail tomorrow. But for now, it's enough to be mindful that it's not about what we are doing. It's about what God is doing in us, through us, and with us when we show up. It's important to remember that God does all the heavy lifting in the spiritual life. The six seismic shifts are things that God does in us. All He asks is that we open ourselves to Him and cooperate. If we start feeling overwhelmed spiritually, there's a fairly good chance that we have confused our role with God's role. The Eucharist floods our souls with the grace needed to respond to these six seismic shifts with courage and wisdom. Each time we receive Jesus in the Eucharist, spend time in the presence of the Eucharist, or acknowledge Jesus' presence in the tabernacle, our souls flood with grace. Consecrating yourself to Jesus in the Eucharist involves all six of these spiritual shifts. We will eventually arrive at these six significant moments in the spiritual life organically if we stay committed to the journey. So this consecration process will raise our awareness of them over these 33 days. Trust, surrender, believe, and receive. So the spiritual lesson for today, the spiritual life is not about what we are doing, it's about what God is doing in us, through us, and with us, when we surrender and make ourselves available to Him. And the virtue of the day is surrender. The virtue of surrender leads to tranquility. If you find yourself wrestling with every situation or doing battle with every person, it's time to explore why you are so insistent on imposing your will on every person and situation. The secret to surrendering to God is knowing your responsibilities and being clear about His responsibilities. Our willingness to surrender says a lot about our understanding of God.
And so we'll all now end by praying the spiritual communion together.
Jesus, I believe that you are truly present in the most holy sacrament of the Eucharist. Every day I long for more of you. I love you above all things, and I desire to receive you into my soul. Since I cannot receive you sacramentally at this moment, I invite you to come and dwell in my heart. May this spiritual communion increase my desire for the Eucharist. You are the healer of my soul. Take the blindness from my eyes, and deafness from my ears, the darkness from my mind, and the hardness from my heart. Fill me with the grace, wisdom, and courage to do your will in all things. My Lord and my God, draw me close to you, nearer than ever before. Amen.
So we say, St. John the Evangelist,
Pray for us.
And we will see you tomorrow at noon with our staff. Thanks for joining us today. Have a blessed day.
Bye, everybody.